I was 67 years old when my own son tried to drug me. Not for love, not for mercy, for money. The woman I thought was my daughter-in-law had it all planned out. The wine, the documents, the diagnosis they'd forge, the facility where I'd rot away while they drained my accounts dry. If a stranger, a housemaid whose name I didn't even know, hadn't slipped that note into my palm, I'd be gone. Erased. Just another inconvenient old woman who lost her mind. But I didn't drink the wine, and what happened next tore my family apart before it could put us back together. If you want to see how far a mother will go to survive her own child's betrayal, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far the story travels. I should have known something was wrong the moment Daniel called. My son hadn't phoned me in 4 months. 4 months of silence so thick I'd started wondering if I'd done something to offend him, if I'd said the wrong thing at Christmas, if maybe I was just too much, too old, too needy, the kind of mother adult children tolerate out of obligation, not love. So when his name lit up my phone on that Tuesday afternoon, my heart did this stupid little jump, like I was 16 again, waiting for a boy to notice me. Mom? His voice sounded tight, rehearsed. Daniel, sweetheart, is everything all right? A pause, too long. Yeah, everything's fine. Lydia and I were talking and we thought we've let too much time pass. We want to see you. Have you over for dinner? I gripped the phone tighter. Dinner? This Friday, at our place. Nothing fancy, just family. It's been too long, Mom. My throat went dry. I wanted to believe him so badly it hurt, but something in his tone felt off, like he was reading from a script someone else had written. That sounds wonderful, I heard myself say. Great, 7 o'clock, I'll text you the address. I have your address, honey. I've been there before. We moved, new place, bigger. Lydia wanted more space. Another thing he hadn't told me. Oh, well, that's exciting. Yeah, see you Friday, Mom. The line went dead before I could say I loved him. I stood there in my small kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. The afternoon light slanted through the window above the sink, illuminating the crack in the tile I kept meaning to fix, the drip from the faucet I'd learned to ignore. My whole life felt like that lately. Small, manageable, quietly falling apart. But Daniel wanted to see me. That had to mean something. I spent 3 days trying to figure out what to wear. Stupid, right? A grown woman, a widow, a mother, agonizing over clothes like I was going on a first date. But I wanted Daniel to see that I was doing okay, that I didn't need taking care of, that I was still relevant. I settled on a navy dress I'd bought for a funeral 2 years ago and hadn't worn since. It still fit, which felt like a small victory against time. Friday came too fast and too slow. I drove to the address Daniel had texted, my hands damp on the steering wheel. The neighborhood was one of those new developments where every house looked like it cost more than I'd earn in 3 lifetimes. Tall gates, perfect lawns, the kind of place where people didn't know their neighbors' names but knew exactly how much their cars cost. Daniel's house, Daniel and Lydia's house, sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, all modern angles and floor-to-ceiling windows. My beat-up Honda looked obscene parked in front of it. I checked my reflection in the rear-view mirror. Too much blush. I rubbed some off with my thumb, smearing it, making it worse. Stop it, I told myself. He's your son. This is supposed to be nice. But my stomach was churning. I walked up the stone pathway to the front door, each step feeling heavier than the last. Before I could ring the bell, the door swung open. Lydia stood there, backlit by the glow of crystal chandeliers, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine spread. Blonde hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, white silk blouse, those expensive jeans that somehow cost $400. Her smile was perfect, too perfect. Evelyn, you made it. She leaned in for a hug that felt like embracing a mannequin. Cold, rigid. She smelled like bergamot and ambition. Thank you for having me, I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. Of course, come in, come in. Daniel's just finishing up a call, but he'll be right down. The house was enormous. White marble floors, abstract art that probably cost more than my car. Everything looked staged, like no one actually lived here, like it was all just set dressing. Your home is beautiful, I said, because that's what you're supposed to say. Thank you, we worked with a designer. Took forever, but we wanted it to be perfect. Lydia's heels clicked against the marble as she led me toward the dining room. Can I get you something to drink? Wine? We have a lovely Pinot Noir breathing. Just water would be fine. Oh, come on, Evelyn. Live a little. It's a celebration. Something about the way she said that last word made my skin prickle. What are we celebrating? Lydia's smile never wavered. Family, reconciliation, new beginnings. She disappeared into the kitchen before I could ask what she meant. I stood alone in the dining room staring at the table. It was set for 3, fine china, actual silverware, candles that hadn't been lit yet, a bottle of red wine in the center, next to 3 crystal glasses. Everything looked perfect, everything felt wrong. Mom? I turned. Daniel stood in the doorway, and for a second I forgot how to breathe. He looked so much like his father, same jawline, same way of standing with his hands in his pockets when he was nervous. But his eyes were different, hollow, like he'd been awake for days. Daniel. I moved toward him, arms open for a hug, but he stepped back slightly, offering a stiff half embrace instead. Glad you could make it, he said. Not I missed you, not I'm sorry it's been so long. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. He nodded, looking past me at the table. Lydia went all out. She did. Silence stretched between us like taffy. I wanted to ask him why. Why the silence? Why now? Why did looking at me seem to cause him physical pain? But Lydia returned before I could find the words, carrying a tray with the wine bottle and glasses. All right, she announced too brightly. Let's get this party started. She poured wine into all 3 glasses, filling them almost to the rim. Daniel watched her with an expression I couldn't read. To family, Lydia said, raising her glass. Daniel raised his. I picked up mine, the crystal cold against my palm. We were about to toast when the kitchen door swung open. A young woman appeared, mid-20s, dark hair pulled into a severe bun, wearing a plain black dress with a white apron. She carried a tray of appetizers, her eyes fixed on the floor. The housemaid. Just set those down, Maria, Lydia said sharply. We'll serve ourselves. Maria nodded, placing the tray on the table. But as she straightened, her hand brushed against mine. Something small and folded pressed into my palm. Paper. I closed my fingers around it reflexively, my heart suddenly hammering. Maria's eyes met mine for just a fraction of a second. They were wide, frightened. Then she was gone, back through the kitchen door. Sorry about that, Lydia said smoothly. She's new, still learning the ropes. I slipped the paper into my dress pocket, trying to keep my hand steady. Now, where were we? Lydia raised her glass again. To family. To family, Daniel echoed quietly. I lifted my glass, but I didn't drink. Something was happening, something I didn't understand yet. And that fear, that primal gut-level wrongness, was screaming at me not to put that wine anywhere near my lips. Evelyn, Lydia was staring at me. You're not drinking. I want to savor the moment, I said weakly. Her smile tightened. Of course, but it really is a beautiful wine. Daniel picked it out specially. Didn't you, honey? Daniel's jaw clenched. Yeah. Come on, Mom, he said, and his voice cracked on that last word. Just have some wine. And that's when I knew whatever was in that glass, I couldn't drink it. My son, my boy, the child I'd carried and birthed and raised, was asking me to poison myself. The room tilted. I set the glass down carefully, my hand shaking so badly the wine nearly sloshed over the rim. Actually, I'm not feeling well. The lie came out strangled. I think I might be coming down with something. The drive over, I feel a bit dizzy. Lydia's eyes narrowed. You just got here. I know, I'm so sorry. I think I just need to lie down. Maybe we could reschedule. Mom, you haven't even eaten anything. Daniel's voice was pleading now, desperate. Just stay. Have some wine. You'll feel better. I looked at my son and I didn't recognize him. I really should go. I stood up too fast. The chair scraped against the marble. Lydia stood too, her composure cracking just slightly. Evelyn, I really think you're overreacting. Thank you for the invitation. I'm sorry, I have to go. I grabbed my purse and moved toward the front door, my legs weak, my vision swimming. Behind me, I heard Lydia hiss something at Daniel in a voice too low to make out. My fingers fumbled with the doorknob. For one terrible second, I thought it was locked, that they wouldn't let me leave. Then it turned. I stumbled out into the cold night air, gasping like I'd been underwater. The door slammed behind me. I ran to my car, hands shaking so badly I dropped my keys twice before I could get the door open. I threw myself into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and just sat there, trembling, staring at the perfect house with its perfect windows glowing warm and golden. Inside that house, my son and his wife were watching me. I could feel it. I started the engine and pulled away, my tires squealing slightly on the pristine asphalt. I drove for 10 minutes before I remembered the note. Mitchis. I pulled into a gas station parking lot, my hands still shaking, and dug the folded paper out of my pocket. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, I smoothed it open. 5 words, written in hasty, desperate handwriting. Don't drink. Leave now. I read it again and again. My vision blurred. I was crying without realizing it. Hot tears streaming down my face, dripping onto the paper and smearing the ink. Someone in that house had tried to warn me. Someone in that house knew what was in that wine. And my son, my Daniel, had poured it anyway. I sat in that parking lot for an hour, watching strangers pump gas and buy lottery tickets and live their normal lives. Lives that made sense. Lives where sons didn't invite their mothers over to drug them. Eventually, I drove home. My house felt different when I walked in. Smaller, safer. I locked the door behind me, then checked it twice. I closed all the curtains. I turned on every light. Then I sat at my kitchen table and tried to breathe. The note was still in my hand, crumpled now, the words barely legible. Don't drink. Leave now. Who was she? Maria, Lydia had called her, the new housemaid. Why would she warn me? What was in that wine? And Daniel, oh God, Daniel, what had Lydia done to him? What had she convinced him to do? I didn't sleep that night. I sat up in my living room chair, the TV on mute, watching headlights occasionally sweep across my window. Every car that slowed down made my heart stop. Every sound made me flinch. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Mom, you really embarrassed us tonight. Lydia is upset. You could have at least tried. I stared at the message until the screen went dark. My son thought I'd embarrassed him. My son who had just tried to drug me. I typed and deleted a dozen responses. What do you say to that? How do you explain to your child that you know he tried to poison you without sounding insane? I settled on, I'm sorry, I really wasn't feeling well. His response came immediately, whatever. I set the phone down and went to the bathroom. I was going to be sick. I made it to the toilet just in time, retching up nothing but bile and fear. When it was over, I sat on the cold tile floor, my back against the bathtub, and let myself fall apart. I cried like I hadn't cried since my husband died. Great, ugly, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken inside me. My son didn't love me. Maybe he never had. Maybe I'd just been fooling myself all these years, seeing affection where there was only obligation, seeing a bond where there was only biology. I don't know how long I sat there, long enough for the sky to start lightening, long enough for my tears to dry into salt tracks on my face. Eventually, I pulled myself up and looked in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked old, defeated, used up, but she was alive. And something was starting to burn beneath the grief, something harder, angrier. Someone had tried to hurt me last night, and I needed to know why. I called in sick to my part-time job at the library. Mrs. Henderson wasn't happy. Friday mornings were always busy, but I couldn't think about shelving books right now. I made coffee with shaking hands and sat at my laptop. Where do you even start with something like this? I googled drugging elderly parents and immediately regretted it. Pages and pages of news articles. Adult children sedating parents to steal their money. Families fighting over inheritances. Conservatorships. Elder abuse. It happened all the time. I wasn't special. I was just another statistic. But that note meant someone inside that house knew what was happening and wanted to stop it. I needed to find Maria. I pulled up Facebook and searched for Daniel's profile. He barely used it. His last post was from 8 months ago, some motivational quote about success. But Lydia was all over social media. Her Instagram was public, full of carefully curated photos of their perfect life. I scrolled through months of images. Lydia at charity galas. Lydia with her book club. Lydia posing in front of their enormous house. Then, 3 weeks ago, a photo of Lydia in their pristine kitchen holding a glass of champagne. In the background, slightly out of focus, was a young woman in a black dress, Maria. The caption read, "So grateful for our new house manager. Finally have time to focus on what matters. Hashtag blessed. Hashtag home life. Hashtag grateful house manager. Not housemaid." I screenshotted the photo and zoomed in on Maria's face. She was young, pretty, and she looked absolutely miserable. I kept scrolling. 2 weeks ago, another photo. This time Lydia was showing off a new handbag, and in the reflection of a mirror behind her, you could see Maria cleaning a window. And 1 week ago, a group photo from some dinner party, Lydia and Daniel with 3 other couples, all of them holding wine glasses and smiling. And there, at the very edge of the frame, clearing plates, Maria. I studied that last photo for a long time. Something about the way she stood, the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes were fixed on the floor like she was trying to be invisible. I knew that posture. I'd seen it on women in shelters, on my friend Patricia after her husband started getting mean, on myself in the mirror during the 2 years before my husband died, when his dementia turned him into someone I didn't recognize. Maria was afraid. I needed to talk to her, but how? I couldn't exactly show up at Daniel's house and ask to speak to the help, and I didn't even know her last name. I was still staring at the photo when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Silence. Then a whisper. "Mrs. Carter." My heart stopped. "Yes, it's Maria from last night. Please don't hang up." I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles went white. "How did you get my number?" "I saw it on Mr. Daniel's phone. I memorized it. I'm sorry. I know this is crazy, but I need to talk to you. They're planning something bad." "Who? Daniel and Lydia?" "Please," her voice broke. "Can we meet somewhere public? I have proof. I have recordings. But I can't do this over the phone." There, a noise in the background. Footsteps. "I have to go. There's a coffee shop on Maple Street, the Blue Jay. Can you be there in an hour?" Yes, I'll be there. Come alone, please. If they find out I talk to you." The line went dead. I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear, my whole body shaking. Recordings. She said she had recordings. I looked at the clock. 8:30 a.m. I had an hour to pull myself together and figure out what the hell was happening to my life. The Blue Jay was one of those hipster coffee places with exposed brick and plants hanging from the ceiling. I got there 15 minutes early and ordered tea I didn't drink. Every time the door opened, I flinched. At exactly 9:30, Maria walked in. She looked different in civilian clothes. Jeans and a sweatshirt, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. She was younger than I'd thought, maybe 23, 24, and she was terrified. She spotted me and walked over quickly, sliding into the booth across from me. "Thank you for coming," she said. "What's happening?" "What do you mean they're planning something?" Maria pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking worse than mine. "I've worked for them for 6 weeks," she said quietly. "At first I thought they were just, you know, rich people, kind of cold, kind of demanding. But then about 2 weeks ago, I heard them fighting. About what? About money. Mrs. Lydia was yelling at Mr. Daniel, saying they were running out of time, that they needed to secure the assets before someone got suspicious. I didn't understand what she meant until a few days later when I saw documents on Mr. Daniel's desk. She swiped through her phone and turned it toward me. I was looking at a photo of a legal document. The words swam in front of my eyes, but certain phrases jumped out. Petition for conservatorship. Subject, Evelyn Marie Carter. Grounds, mental incapacity / cognitive decline. The room tilted. I don't understand, I whispered. They're trying to have you declared mentally unfit. See this? Maria pointed to a section of the document. They already have a doctor lined up to sign off on it. Dr. Richard Beaumont. I looked him up. He's been sued twice for fraudulent diagnoses in conservatorship cases. I couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in. But I'm fine. I'm completely competent. No judge would. That's where the wine comes in. Maria swiped to another photo. This one showed a small amber bottle with no label. I found this in Miss Lydia's bathroom cabinet. I took a picture and sent it to my cousin. She's a pharmacy tech. She said it's a benzodiazepine, a sedative, a strong one. The pieces were clicking into place, each one more horrifying than the last. They were going to drug me to, yes, and then according to a text I saw on Mrs. Lydia's phone, they were going to call 911, say you showed up to dinner acting confused and erratic. The doctor would examine you, find drugs in your system, combine that with your erratic behavior and sign the papers. Then they'd have you placed in a facility while they took control of your finances. I was going to be sick again. Why? My voice came out strangled. I don't have that much money. My husband's pension, some savings, the house. It's not a fortune. Maria's expression turned pitying. Mrs. Carter, I've seen the financial documents they have on you. Your husband had a life insurance policy, a big one, and your house, it's paid off, right? In this market, it's worth almost $700,000, plus your retirement accounts, your savings. They think you're worth close to $1.2 million. The number hit me like a punch. I don't. But even as I said it, I knew it was true. Richard's life insurance had been substantial. I'd barely touched it, just letting it sit in an account because I didn't know what else to do. And yes, the house was paid off, and my retirement fund had grown over the years. I'd never thought of it as wealth. It was just security, safety, the last pieces of the life Richard and I had built together, and my son wanted to steal it. There's more, Maria said softly. How could there possibly be more? She pulled up another photo. This one showed a brochure for a nursing facility. Shady Pines Extended Care. I looked this place up. It's bad, Mrs. Carter. Really bad. Multiple citations for neglect, understaffed. Patients left in soiled beds for hours. But it's cheap. And once you're there, once you're on the right medications, She trailed off. Once I'm too drugged to know what's happening. Yes. I stared at the brochure, at the smiling old people in the photos, none of whom looked like they were actually at that facility. This is insane, I said. Daniel couldn't. But even as I said it, I remembered his face last night, the hollowness in his eyes, the desperation when he asked me to drink the wine. I don't think he wants to, Maria said gently. I think she's manipulating him. Mrs. Lydia, I mean, I've heard her. She tells him it's for the best, that you're getting older, that you'll need care eventually anyway, that they're just being proactive, and she tells him about all the things they can do with the money, the trips they'll take, the debt they'll pay off. Debt? They're broke, Mrs. Carter, or close to it. That house? It's rented. The car's leased. Mrs. Lydia's shopping addiction has maxed out 4 credit cards that I know of. Mr. Daniel lost a lot of money on some investment last year. They're drowning. And you're the lifeboat. I felt like I was falling. This whole time I'd thought Daniel had pulled away because I wasn't enough, because I was boring or needy or old. But really he'd been sizing me up, calculating my worth. deciding if stealing my life was worth the guilt. "There's one more thing," Maria said, "and this is the part that made me risk everything to warn you." She pulled up a final photo. This one showed a printout of a news article from 3 years ago. "Elderly woman's death, ruled accidental. Family inherits estate." I scanned the article. A 72-year-old woman named Margaret Chen had died in a care facility after an accidental overdose of sedatives. Her daughter and son-in-law had inherited her substantial estate. "I don't understand. What does this have to do with—" Maria pointed to the daughter's name in the article, Lydia Chen Hartwell. The coffee shop disappeared. There was only that name burning itself into my vision, Chen, Lydia's maiden name. "She did this before," I whispered. "And she got away with it. The death was ruled accidental. The facility took the fall. Lydia and her first husband split almost $2 million. First husband? He died 6 months later. Car accident. Single vehicle crash. She walked away with everything. I couldn't process this. It was too much, too evil, too calculating. Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Why risk your job? Why help me?" Maria's eyes filled with tears. "Because my grandmother died in a place like Shady Pines, and I wasn't there. I didn't protect her. I was too young, too powerless, and I've had to live with that guilt every single day." She wiped her eyes roughly. "When I saw those documents, when I realized what they were planning, I couldn't let it happen again. I couldn't." We sat in silence for a moment. Two women who didn't know each other, bound by the universal fear of being disposable. "What do I do?" I asked finally. "You fight back. You document everything. You make copies of all your important papers. You talk to a lawyer, and you stay away from them until you're ready." "Ready for what?" Maria's expression hardened. "To destroy her before she destroys you." I left the coffee shop with Maria's phone number saved in my contacts and a USB drive containing everything she'd photographed, documents, text messages, the news article about Margaret Chen, the bottle of drugs, all of it. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was furious. I drove home and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and the USB drive. I opened every file. I read every document. I traced every piece of Lydia's carefully constructed plan to erase me. And I started making my own plan. First, I called my bank and put alerts on all my accounts. Any transaction over $500 would require in-person verification. I changed all my passwords. I secured my documents in a safe deposit box. Then I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the best estate attorney in the city. Cost me $200 just for a consultation, but I didn't care. Her name was Patricia Reeves, and she was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit. I showed her everything. She didn't say a word until she'd reviewed every document. Then she looked up at me and said, "Mrs. Carter, you need to file for a restraining order against your daughter-in-law immediately, and we need to report Dr. Beaumont to the medical board." "What about Daniel?" Her expression softened. "That's your call. But if he's involved in this conspiracy, if he knowingly participated in attempting to drug you, he could face criminal charges against my son." "I just wanted to stop," I said. "Then we make it stop. We go on the offensive. We expose what they've done. And we make sure they can never try this again with you or anyone else." I signed the retainer agreement with a hand that didn't shake at all. See, that night I got another text from Daniel. "Mom, Lydia thinks we should all talk. Clear the air. Can you come by tomorrow?" I stared at the message for a long time. They thought I was weak. They thought I was confused. They thought I was an easy target. They had no idea what was coming. I typed back, "I'd like that." "What time?" His response was immediate, 2 p.m. "Thanks, Mom, this means a lot." Oh. I set the phone down and went to my bedroom. From the back of my closet, I pulled out a small digital recorder that Richard used to use for work meetings. I checked the batteries, full charge. Tomorrow, I was going back to that house, but this time I was going to get the truth, and I was going to record every single word. I didn't sleep that night either. I kept rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd act, how I'd get them to confess without them knowing I was recording. Patricia had been very clear. I needed them to admit what they planned. I needed it in their own words. The recorder sat on my nightstand, small and black and full of possibilities. I'd tested it 3 times. The sound quality was perfect. At 6 a.m., I gave up on sleep and made coffee. My hands were steady as I poured it. That scared me a little. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt cold, calculated, like something fundamental had shifted inside me and I'd never be the same person again. Maybe that's what betrayal does. It burns away the soft parts and leaves only the hard edges. I showered and dressed carefully. Not the funeral dress this time, jeans and a sweater. Comfortable shoes. I needed to look maternal, concerned. A little confused maybe. The kind of woman who'd believe whatever story they fed her. The kind of woman who'd drink the wine. I slipped the recorder into my purse and checked it one more time. The red light blinked on, then off. Working perfectly. At 1:45, I got in my car and drove to their house for the second time in 3 days. The neighborhood looked different in daylight, less intimidating. Just houses, just stuff. Just people pretending their lives were bigger than they actually were. I parked in the same spot as before and sat there for a moment, staring at Daniel's front door. My son was in there, the boy I'd carried, the child I'd rocked to sleep when he had nightmares, the teenager I'd driven to soccer practice every Saturday for 4 years. And he tried to drug me. I got out of the car before I could change my mind. This time, Daniel answered the door. He looked worse than he had on Friday. Dark circles under his eyes, his hair uncombed. He was wearing an expensive shirt that looked slept in. "Mom, you came." "Of course I came." He stepped aside to let me in. The house still looked like a museum, still felt cold. "Lydia's in the living room," he said quietly. She really wants to apologize for how things went last time." "I bet she does," I thought. "I appreciate that," I said out loud. He led me through the marble foyer into a sunken living room I hadn't seen before. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a pool that probably cost more than my mortgage. Lydia sat on a white leather couch, her legs crossed, wearing cream-colored slacks and a cashmere sweater that screamed money. She stood when she saw me, her face arranged into an expression of concern. "Evelyn, thank you so much for coming back. I felt terrible about Friday, truly terrible." She moved toward me with her arms open. I let her hug me. It took everything I had. "It's all right," I said. "I really wasn't feeling well. Still, we should have been more understanding." Daniel and I talked about it, and we realized we've been distant. We want to change that. I sat down on the couch across from her. Daniel hovered near the doorway, like he couldn't decide whether to stay or run. "Sit with us, honey," Lydia said to him, patting the couch beside her. He sat. The 3 of us formed a strange triangle in that massive room. "So," Lydia began, her voice warm and syrupy, "we wanted to talk to you about some things, important things, family things." Here it comes, I thought. Daniel and I have been thinking a lot about the future, your future specifically. My future? You're not getting any younger, Evelyn, and living alone in that house, it's a lot of work, isn't it? The maintenance, the yard work, the bills. I said nothing, just waited. We think it might be time to consider alternatives, downsizing maybe, or even moving into a community where there are people around, where you'd have help if you needed it. A community, I repeated flatly. A senior living community, Daniel said, his voice cracked. Somewhere nice, where you wouldn't have to worry about anything. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and I saw it then, the guilt. It was eating him alive. His eyes were red-rimmed. His hands were shaking. Lydia put her hand on his knee. A warning, or a leash. "We've actually looked at a few places," she continued smoothly. "There's one in particular that we think would be perfect. Shady Pines. It's got wonderful amenities, a library, activities, and the staff is very attentive. The lie slid out of her mouth so easily, like she'd practiced it. "That's very thoughtful," I said carefully, "but I'm not ready to leave my home." Lydia's smile tightened. "Of course not. We're just planting the seed, thinking ahead. But there's another matter we wanted to discuss." She reached for a folder on the coffee table. Crisp, professional. She opened it and turned it toward me. "This is information about setting up a power of attorney and possibly a conservatorship. Just as a precaution, you understand, so that if something were to happen, if you got sick or had an accident, Daniel would be able to make decisions on your behalf, to protect you." There it was, the trap, laid out like a feast. I looked down at the papers, the same documents Maria had photographed, legal jargon about mental capacity and financial management and medical decisions. "You want me to sign over control of my finances to Daniel?" "Not control," Lydia said quickly. "Just joint management, partnership, so you're not alone with all that responsibility." I let the silence stretch, let them think I was considering it. "Why now?" I asked finally. "What do you mean? Why are you suddenly so concerned about my welfare? You haven't called me in months." Daniel barely answers my texts. "And now, out of nowhere, you want to manage my money and move me into a nursing home?" Daniel flinched. "It's not a nursing home, Mom. It's a care facility," Lydia interrupted. "And we're bringing this up now because we love you, because we've been neglectful and we're trying to do better. By taking my independence, by making sure you're safe." Lydia's voice had an edge now. The sweetness was curdling. "You're 67 years old, Evelyn. You're alone. What happens if you fall, if you have a stroke? Who's going to help you?" "I have friends, I have neighbors." "Do you?" Lydia leaned forward. "When's the last time someone checked on you? When's the last time anyone called?" The cruelty was surgical, precise. She knew exactly where to cut. "I manage just fine," I said. "For now." "But what about next year, 5 years from now? Daniel is your only family, Evelyn, and he wants to help. We both do. But we can't do that if you won't let us." I looked at Daniel again. He was staring at the floor, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. "Is this what you want?" I asked him directly. "You want to put me in a home and take over my finances?" He didn't answer. "Daniel," I said, "look at me." He did, and the pain in his eyes was real. Whatever else he was, whatever he'd become, he was still suffering. "It's for the best, Mom," he said hoarsely. You don't see it yet, but you will." "Don't see what?" Lydia stood up abruptly. "This isn't productive. Evelyn, you're being defensive. We're trying to have an adult conversation about your care, and you're acting like we're attacking you." "Because you are." The words came out harder than I'd intended. Lydia's mask slipped for just a second. I saw rage flash across her face before she smoothed it away. "I think you should leave," she said coldly. "I think you're right." I stood up, clutching my purse. The recorder was still running, but I hadn't gotten what I needed. They'd been too careful, too vague. I needed them to say it, to admit what they'd planned. I turned to go, then stopped, turned back. "Just tell me one thing," I said. "The wine on Friday, what was in it?" Dead silence. Daniel went white. Lydia's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about? The wine you poured for me, the one you both insisted I drink. What was in it?" "Nothing," Lydia said. "It was wine, Evelyn, just wine. You're being paranoid." "Am I?" I pulled the crumpled note from my purse. "Then why did your housemaid give me this?" I held it up. 5 words that changed everything. "Don't drink. Leave now." Daniel stood up, his face crumbling. "Mom, shut up," Lydia snapped at him, then to me. "Where did you get that? Does it matter?" That girl had no right. "No right to what? To warn me that you were trying to drug me?" "We weren't," Daniel started. "Don't lie to me," my voice broke. 30 years of being a good mother, a patient mother, a mother who accepted whatever scraps of affection she was given. All of it shattered. "Don't you dare lie to me, Daniel. I know about the benzodiazepines. I know about the conservatorship papers. I know about Dr. Beaumont and his fraudulent diagnoses. I know about Shady Pines and its violations. I know everything. Lydia's face went from pale to crimson. You've been snooping? I've been surviving. I was shaking now, but not from fear, from fury. You tried to poison me. You tried to steal my life. And you, I turned to Daniel, my voice breaking, you were going to let her. Mom, please, you don't understand. Then make me understand. Explain to me how drugging your own mother and locking her away in a hellhole is anything other than evil. We need the money. The words exploded out of him. Daniel was crying now, actual tears streaming down his face. We're drowning, Mom. We're going to lose everything. The house, the cars, everything. We owe almost $200,000 in debt. I lost everything in a bad investment, and Lydia's been covering it with credit cards, and we're out of options. We're desperate. So you decided to rob me. It's not robbing, Lydia said, her voice icy now. It's family. It's what families do. They help each other. By destroying each other? You don't need that money, she shot back. You're going to die in 10, maybe 15 years. What are you going to do with $1.2 million? Buy a nicer casket? We could actually use it. We could build something. Invest it properly. Make it grow. The casual calculation of my death knocked the air out of my lungs. You already spent it in your head, didn't you? I said slowly. My life, my savings, everything Richard and I worked for. You've already divided it up like I'm already dead. Don't be dramatic, Lydia said. Dramatic? You were going to drug me and have me declared insane. Incapacitated, she corrected. There's a difference. Not to me. Well, maybe that's the problem, Lydia was yelling now, all pretense of civility gone. Maybe you're too selfish to see that you're sitting on resources you don't need while your own son is suffering. What kind of mother watches her child struggle and does nothing? What kind of son tries to poison his mother for money? Daniel made a sound like a wounded animal. I never wanted to. I told her we should just ask you, just explain the situation. But she said you'd say no. Of course I would have said no. I was crying now too, hot, angry tears. Not because I don't love you, but because this is insane. You want me to fund your lifestyle? To pay for your mistakes? To give up my security so you can keep pretending you're something you're not. We're not pretending, Lydia said. We're entitled to this. Daniel is your heir. That money will be his eventually anyway. We're just expediting the process. By erasing me. By taking care of you, she insisted. Shady Pines would have been fine. You would have been fed and housed and medicated. You wouldn't have known the difference. Because you were going to keep me drugged. She didn't deny it. I looked at Daniel. Is that what you told yourself? That I wouldn't know? That I wouldn't care? He couldn't meet my eyes. Lydia said, she said it would be better this way, that if we just asked you'd get hurt, that you'd feel pressured or guilty, that it was kinder to just handle it. Kinder, I repeated numbly. Her mother went the same way, he continued, his voice desperate now. Like if he could just explain it right, I'd understand. Lydia's mom, she was in a facility for 3 years before she passed. She was comfortable. She didn't suffer. She was murdered, I said. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Lydia went very still. What did you say? Margaret Chen, your mother. She didn't die from an accidental overdose. You killed her. That's a lie, Lydia said, but her voice was shaking now. My mother's death was investigated. It was ruled accidental. Because you made it look like an accident, just like you were going to make my decline look natural. How long were you going to keep me at Shady Pines, Lydia? A year? 2? Until the money ran out, or until I accidentally overdosed on my medication? Daniel turned to Lydia, his face white. What is she talking about? She's making things up. She's confused. I'm not confused. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo Maria had sent me. The news article about Margaret Chen's death. I showed it to Daniel. Read it. Read what your wife did to her own mother. He took the phone with shaking hands. I watched his face as he read, watched the color drain away, watched comprehension dawn, then horror. Lydia, he said quietly, tell me this isn't true." "It was different," she said. "My mother was actually sick. She was in pain. I was merciful." "Merciful," he repeated. His voice was hollow. "You killed your mother for her money. I freed her from suffering. And yes, I inherited her estate. I was her daughter. It was my right." "And your first husband?" I asked. "James Hartwell, the one who died 6 months later in a car accident, was that mercy too?" Lydia's eyes flashed. "That was an accident." "Was it?" "You can't prove anything," she said, but there was panic in her voice now. She was losing control. "I don't need to prove anything about James," I said. "I just need to prove what you tried to do to me. And I have that." I pulled the recorder from my purse and held it up. The small red light was blinking. Lydia's face went from red to grey. "You recorded this?" "Every word." "That's illegal. You can't record someone without their consent." "Actually, in this state, I can. Single-party consent. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's legal." I smiled, and it felt like baring teeth. "I've been talking to lawyers, Lydia. Good ones. The kind you can't afford anymore." Daniel was staring at the recorder like it was a snake. "Mom, what are you going to do?" "What am I going to do?" I looked at my son, really looked at him, at the man he'd become. Weak, desperate, so easily manipulated by a woman who'd probably been planning to destroy him too, eventually. "I'm going to make sure you both face consequences for what you tried to do to me." "Please," Daniel said. "Please, Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. We were desperate." And Lydia said, I cut him off. "When are you going to take responsibility for your own choices, Daniel? She didn't force you to pour that wine. She didn't hold a gun to your head. You chose this. You chose money over your own mother." He was sobbing now, full body sobs that shook his shoulders. I know, I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this." "Then what do you want?" Lydia demanded. "What's it going to take to make this go away?" "Money. We'll pay you back every penny with interest." "With what money?" I asked. "You just said you're broke." "We'll figure it out. We'll sell things. You'll go to prison," I said. "Both of you. Attempted fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy. And that's just for what you tried to do to me. Once they start investigating Margaret's death, James's accident." "You have no proof of any of that." "Maybe not, but I wonder what they'll find when they start looking. Bank records, insurance payouts, medical records." Lydia lunged at me. Actually lunged, like she was going to grab the recorder. Daniel caught her arm. "Don't," he said. "Let go of me." "Lydia, stop. Just stop." He was still crying, but something had shifted in his face, something like clarity. "She's right. We tried to destroy her. We were going to lock her away and steal everything, and I went along with it because I'm a coward, because I was too afraid to tell you no." "Daniel, no." He let go of her arm. I'm done. I'm done lying. I'm done pretending this is anything other than what it is. We tried to hurt my mother. We're the villains here." Lydia stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "You're choosing her over me?" "I'm choosing to stop being a monster," she laughed. Actually laughed. It was a cold, brittle sound. "You think that matters? You think admitting it makes it better? You're just as guilty as I am. More, maybe. She's your mother. You betrayed your own blood for money." "I know," Daniel said. "And I'll live with that for the rest of my life. But at least I'll live with it honestly." Lydia looked between us, and I saw her calculating, trying to figure out if there was still a way to win, still a way to manipulate the situation. There wasn't. "Fine," she said finally. "You want honesty? Here's honesty. I don't care about either of you. I never did. Daniel, you were a mark, a weak, desperate man with access to money. That's all you ever were. And Evelyn?" She turned to me with pure venom. "You were a resource to be extracted, nothing more." "I know," I said calmly. "I figured that out." "Good for you. So what now? You turn that recording over to the police, ruin our lives. Congratulations, you win." "This isn't about winning." "Then what's it about?" "It's about making sure you never do this to anyone else." Lydia smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. You think I'm going to prison? Please, I'll get a good lawyer. I'll claim it was all a misunderstanding. I'll say you misinterpreted everything, that you're a bitter, lonely old woman who's confused. It'll be your word against mine. Not just mine, I said. Maria's going to testify. She has evidence too. Photos of the drugs, copies of the documents, text messages. The smile faltered. That little bitch. She's braver than both of you combined. She's nobody, a housemaid. Who's going to believe her? A jury, I said. When they hear her testimony alongside this recording, when they see the pattern, when they investigate Margaret's death and find the same doctor, the same facility type, the same method, Lydia's composure finally cracked completely. You can't do this to me. I won't let you. You don't have a choice. She looked around wildly like she was searching for an escape route. Then her eyes landed on Daniel. Tell her, Lydia said. Tell her you'll deny everything. Tell her it was all a mistake. Tell her you love me. Daniel looked at her, then at me, then back at her. No, he said quietly. Daniel, I said no. His voice was stronger now. I'm going to tell the truth. Whatever happens, I'm going to tell the truth. And just like that, Lydia's whole world collapsed. I could see it in her face, the realization that she'd lost, that her carefully constructed manipulation had fallen apart. She turned and ran, literally ran out of the living room, her heels clicking frantically on the marble. We heard a door slam somewhere in the house. Daniel and I stood in the silence she left behind. She's going to run, he said. She's packing right now. She'll disappear before the police can arrest her. Let her run, I said. They'll find her. And running just makes her look more guilty. He nodded slowly. Then he looked at me and his face crumpled again. I don't expect you to forgive me. Good, because I don't know if I can. I understand. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. I know that doesn't change anything. I know I've destroyed whatever relationship we had, but I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. I let fear turn me into someone I don't recognize. I wanted to comfort him. Every maternal instinct in my body screamed at me to hug him, to tell him it would be okay, to make it better. But I couldn't. You need to call the police, I said instead. Tell them everything. Cooperate fully. It's the only chance you have. I will. And Daniel? Yeah? Get a lawyer, a real one, not the kind Lydia would choose. He laughed bitterly. Can't afford one anymore. I'll pay for it. His head snapped up. What? I'll pay for your legal defense. Not hers, just yours, on one condition. Anything. You testify against her. You tell them everything. Every conversation, every plan, every detail of what she tried to do to me and what she did to her mother. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, I'll do it. I turned to leave. Mom? I stopped but didn't turn around. I really am sorry. I know, I said. That's the worst part. I walked out of that house for the last time. Behind me I heard Daniel calling the police. His voice shook, but the words were clear. I need to report an attempted crime against my mother, and I was part of it. I sat in my car outside that house and watched the police arrive. 2 squad cars, lights flashing but no sirens. The neighbors would talk. Let them. Let everyone know what kind of people lived in that pristine palace with its perfect lawn and its rotting heart. Daniel met them at the door. I could see him through the window, his shoulders hunched, his hands gesturing as he explained. One of the officers kept glancing back at my car. I'd told them I'd wait, give my statement, hand over the recording. My phone buzzed. Patricia Reeves. Mrs. Carter, I just got a call from the police. Are you all right? I'm fine. I'm at the scene now. What happened? I told her everything. The confrontation, the confession, Lydia's admission, Daniel's breakdown. When I finished, there was a long pause. You got all of that recorded? Every word. Evelyn, you did something incredibly brave and incredibly dangerous. If Lydia had gotten violent, I know, but I had to hear them say it. I had to know I wasn't crazy. Another pause, then. You were never crazy. You were targeted. There's a difference. The distinction mattered more than she could possibly know. A third police car pulled up, then a fourth. This wasn't just a domestic disturbance anymore. This was a full investigation. I need to go, I told Patricia. They'll want my statement. Call me when you're done. And Evelyn, don't talk to any reporters. If this goes public, and it will, you say nothing without me present. Understood. I hung up and got out of the car. My legs felt weak, like I'd run a marathon. Maybe I had. Maybe survival is its own kind of race. One of the officers approached me. Young guy. Couldn't have been more than 25. He had kind eyes. Mrs. Carter, I'm Officer Reynolds. Your son said you have evidence? I handed him the recorder. It's all on here. The confession, the plan, everything. He took it carefully, like it was made of glass. We'll need you to come down to the station. Give a formal statement. Of course. And Mom, we found the drugs in the master bedroom, prescription bottle with no label, filled with benzodiazepines. Just like you said, my knees almost gave out. Part of me had been terrified they wouldn't find anything, that Lydia would have hidden it, that I'd look like a paranoid old woman making accusations. The suspect, Mrs. Hartwell, she's refusing to come out of the bedroom. We're trying to talk to her now. Suspect. Lydia was a suspect. The word felt good. Official, real. What about my son? Officer Reynolds glanced back at the house. He's cooperating fully, gave us permission to search the premises, showed us where to find the documents. The officer hesitated. He's in pretty bad shape, ma'am. I think he understands how serious this is. Good, I said. He should. The officer looked at me with something like pity. I hated it. I'm not a victim, I told him. Not anymore. No, ma'am, you're a survivor. There's a difference. That word again. Survivor. It felt heavy, like armor I hadn't asked for but needed anyway. They took me to the station in a squad car. I'd never been in one before. The back seat was hard plastic, everything designed to be hosed down. I wondered how many people had sat exactly where I was sitting, their lives unraveling in real time. At the station, they put me in an interview room with bad coffee and worse lighting. A detective came in, woman in her 40s, grey streaking through her hair, eyes that had seen too much. Mrs. Carter, I'm Detective Marissa Walsh. I need to record your statement. Is that all right? Yes. She set up a camera and a microphone, then sat across from me with a notepad. Tell me everything, she said. Start from the beginning. So I did. The phone call from Daniel, the first dinner invitation, the note from Maria, the coffee shop meeting, the USB drive. The second visit, the confrontation, the recording. I talked for 2 hours straight. Detective Walsh didn't interrupt except to clarify details. She wrote everything down in neat, precise handwriting. When I finished, my throat was raw. That's quite a story, Walsh said. It's not a story, it's what happened. I know, I believe you. And between your recording, the physical evidence, the housemaid's testimony, and your son's cooperation, we have a strong case. What happens now? We're arresting Mrs. Hartwell for attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, and unlawful possession of controlled substances. Those are just the initial charges. Once we dig into her background, the deaths of her mother and first husband, there may be more. Will she go to prison? If she's convicted, yes, she's looking at 10 to 15 years minimum. Maybe more if the DA can prove a pattern of predatory behavior. 10 to 15 years. Lydia would be in her 50s when she got out, her whole life gone. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. What about Daniel? I asked quietly. Walsh's expression softened. That's complicated. He's cooperating, which works in his favor. And technically, he didn't administer the drugs or file any fraudulent documents. He was planning to, but intent is harder to prosecute than action. So he gets away with it? I didn't say that. He'll likely face charges, conspiracy at minimum. But with a good lawyer and the fact that he turned on his co-conspirator, he might get a plea deal. Community service, probation, maybe. I'm paying for his lawyer, I said. Walsh's eyebrows went up. After what he did, He's still my son. Is he? The question hit me like a slap. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to defend him, but the words stuck in my throat. I don't know any more, I admitted, but I know he's weak, and I know Lydia manipulated him. That doesn't excuse what he did, but it explains it. Mrs. Carter, can I give you some advice? Please. Don't set yourself on fire to keep him warm. You can help him without destroying yourself. Boundaries are healthy, especially with family. I nodded, but I wasn't sure I knew how to do that. I'd spent 67 years being the kind of mother who gave everything, who sacrificed, who put her child first no matter what. Maybe it was time to learn a different way. They let me go home around 8 p.m. Officer Reynolds drove me. We didn't talk much. He walked me to my door and waited while I unlocked it. Will you be okay tonight? He asked. Yes, thank you. Lock your doors, all of them, just in case. You think Lydia would come here? I think desperate people do desperate things. He waited until I'd locked the door and turned on the lights before he drove away. I stood in my small living room, my safe, familiar living room, and everything looked different. The couch where I watched TV, the bookshelf full of books I'd been meaning to read, the photos on the mantel, including one of Daniel at his college graduation, smiling like he had the world figured out. I took that photo down and turned it face down. Then I sat on the couch and cried, really cried, not the angry tears from earlier. These were grief tears, mourning tears. I was mourning my son, not the man he'd become, but the boy I thought I'd raised, the child who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who brought me dandelions he thought were flowers, who told me I was the best mom in the world. That boy was gone. Maybe he'd never existed. Maybe I just invented him because I needed to believe I'd done something right. The crying jag lasted until I couldn't breathe through my nose anymore. When it was over, I felt hollowed out, empty, but also lighter somehow. I made tea and sat at my kitchen table with the USB drive Maria had given me. I hadn't looked at everything on it yet, just the documents she'd shown me at the coffee shop. I plugged it into my laptop and opened the files. There were dozens of them. Photos of text messages between Lydia and Daniel, screenshots of Google searches, how to declare parent mentally incompetent, conservatorship laws by state, facilities that accept difficult patients. There was a spreadsheet. My stomach turned when I saw it. 2 columns, assets and liquidation value. They'd itemized everything. My house, my car, my retirement accounts, my life insurance policy, even my wedding ring with an estimated resale value of $3,000 at the bottom in bold. Total estimated value, $1,247,000. They'd rounded up. There was another folder labeled template. I opened it. Inside were documents from Lydia's previous conservatorship, the one for her mother, Margaret Chen. I read through them with growing horror. It was the same playbook, the same doctor, Dr. Richard Beaumont, the same facility type, even some of the same language in the legal filings. Lydia had done this before, step by step, and it had worked perfectly. Why wouldn't she do it again? I found a subfolder labeled Communications, more screenshots. These were text messages between Lydia and someone named Jay. My heart stopped when I realized who Jay was. James Hartwell, her first husband, the one who died in a car accident. The messages were from 6 months before his death. Lydia, I'm done with this, with you, with pretending. James, we can work on it, couples therapy. Lydia, I don't want to work on it, I want out. James, and the money? Lydia, what money? James, my mother's life insurance, the inheritance. You think I don't know what you did? Lydia, you don't know anything. James, I know enough, and if you try to leave, I'll tell everyone. I'll go to the police. Lydia, no you won't. James, try me. 3 months later, another exchange. James, I'm talking to a lawyer tomorrow. Lydia, about what? James, about you, about my mother, about everything. Lydia, that would be stupid. James, it's the right thing to do. Lydia, the right thing. How noble. How's your blood pressure, James? You've been looking stressed lately. James, What the hell does that mean? Lydia. Nothing, just concerned about your health. 2 weeks after that, James Hartwell drove his car off a bridge at 2 a.m. single vehicle accident. No witnesses. Police ruled it an accident. He'd been drinking, the road was wet, he lost control. But James's last text message, sent an hour before the crash, was to his brother. If something happens to me, look at Lydia. She's been putting something in my drinks. I think she's trying to kill me. I sat back in my chair, my hands shaking so badly I had to close the laptop. Lydia hadn't just killed her mother. She'd killed her husband too, and she'd almost killed me. My phone rang. I jumped so hard I nearly knocked over my tea. Unknown number. I answered it on the fourth ring, my voice barely steady. Hello? Mrs. Carter? It's Maria. Relief flooded through me. Maria, are you okay? I'm fine. I quit, obviously. I couldn't stay in that house another second after what happened. The police will want to talk to you. I know. Detective Walsh already called. I'm going in tomorrow morning to give my statement. A pause. I'm scared. Of what? Of her. Lydia. What if she gets out on bail? What if she comes after me? She won't, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. She's going to be charged with serious crimes. They won't give her bail. You don't know that. She was right, I didn't. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? I asked. With my cousin. She lives across town. But Mrs. Carter, I found something today, before I left. My stomach dropped. What? A notebook, hidden in Lydia's closet behind a false panel. It's like a journal, but not a normal one. It's a plan. For you, for Daniel, for everything. Can you bring it to the police? I already did. I gave it to Officer Reynolds when they were searching the house, but I took photos first. I'm sending them to you now. You need to see this. My phone buzzed with incoming messages, photos, dozens of them. Thank you, I said. Maria, you saved my life. You know that, right? Her voice cracked. I just did what anyone should do. But most people wouldn't. Most people look away. You didn't. My grandmother, she said quietly. I told you about her. The facility where she died. I wasn't there for her, but I could be there for you. We were both crying now. You're a good person, I told her. So are you. That's why Lydia picked you. She targets good people, people who trust, who want to believe the best in others. She uses that against them. After we hung up, I opened the photos Maria had sent. The notebook was filled with Lydia's handwriting. Neat, precise, terrifying. The first page was titled, Target Assessment, Evelyn Carter. Underneath, she'd written, Age 67, widowed, 1 adult son, D. Estimated assets, $1.2 million. Vulnerabilities, lonely, eager for family connection, conflict avoidant, trusts easily, medical history, non-significant, will need to fabricate decline. Timeline, 6 to 8 months from initial contact to full control. There were pages of notes, strategies for isolating me from friends, scripts for Daniel to use when calling me, a detailed timeline of when to introduce the conservatorship idea, even notes on which facility to choose and why. Shady Pines, citations for neglect work in our favor. Staff overworked, won't notice extra sedation. Remote location discourages visitor drop-ins. Cost effective. 1 page was dedicated to Daniel management. D is wavering. Too much conscience, not enough spine. Must reinforce financial desperation. Show him bills, debt statements, foreclosure notices. Make him feel like he's drowning. Position EC as the lifeboat, not the victim. Frame it as family duty, not theft. If he resists, remind him of mother's comfortable final years. Frame it positively, omit the details. Make him believe he's saving her, not destroying her. She'd been playing my son like a puppet. Another section, dated 2 weeks ago, contingencies. If EC becomes suspicious, gaslight. Claim concern for her mental state. Suggest she's paranoid. Early dementia. If she refuses to cooperate, accelerate timeline, may need to act without full consent. Research involuntary commitment laws. If housemaid becomes Problem: terminate immediately, claim theft to discredit if necessary. She'd planned for everything except Maria's courage, except my survival instinct. The last entry in the notebook was dated yesterday, the day before our confrontation. Tomorrow is the final play. EC is coming to the house. D has agreed to proceed. Wine is prepared, 15 milligrams diazepam, enough to cause confusion but not unconsciousness. We'll call Dr. B to perform emergency evaluation after EC displays erratic behavior. Conservatorship papers ready for filing Monday. By end of month, should have full access to accounts. By end of quarter, we'll liquidate assets and close this chapter. D is becoming liability. We'll need to phase him out post-settlement. Divorce, claim he was abusive/controlling. Position self as victim. Move to new city, new identity if necessary. Reset. Phase him out. Lydia had been planning to destroy Daniel too. After she'd used him up, after she'd gotten what she needed, she was going to discard him like garbage. My son was never her partner. He was just another mark. I forwarded all the photos to Detective Walsh with a message. Evidence from Maria. Lydia's notebook shows premeditation and intent to harm both myself and my son. The response came within minutes. Received, this is huge, changes everything, thank you. I sat in my kitchen until midnight, reading and rereading Lydia's words, trying to understand how someone could be this calculating, this cold. I couldn't. Some people are just broken in ways that can't be fixed. That's what my husband used to say back when he was a social worker. Before the dementia, before I spent 2 years watching him forget who I was, Richard would have known what to do with all this. He would have had wisdom, perspective, comfort. But Richard was gone, and I was handling this alone. Except I wasn't alone. Not really. I had Patricia, I had Maria, I had Detective Walsh and Officer Reynolds, and a whole system of people who believed me. That was more than I'd had a week ago. My phone rang again. 11:47 p.m. Daniel. I stared at his name on the screen. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but I answered. Mom, his voice was wrecked, hoarse from crying. What do you want, Daniel? They arrested her, Lydia. They took her away in handcuffs. She was screaming about lawyers and rights and false accusations. She said terrible things about you, about me. I'm sure she did. Mom, I saw the notebook. The police showed me what she wrote about you, about us. She was going to... He choked on the words. She was going to get rid of me too, after everything. I was just a tool to her. Yes, silence. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I don't know how many times I need to say it. I don't know what else to do. There's nothing else to do. You made your choices. Now you live with them. I know I deserve everything that's coming. The charges, the publicity, losing my job, losing you. I deserve all of it. Probably. But Mom, I need you to know something. I need you to understand. I was weak. I was desperate. I was stupid. But I never stopped loving you, not for 1 second. That's what makes it so much worse. I loved you and I still tried to hurt you. What kind of person does that? A person who loves money more than people. He made a sound like I'd punched him. You're right, you're absolutely right, and I hate myself for it. I look in the mirror and I don't recognize who's looking back. Good, I said. Maybe that means there's hope for you yet. Is there? Hope? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I don't know, I said honestly. I know I can't have the relationship with you that I used to have. That's gone. You killed it, but maybe we can build something new, something honest. But Daniel, it's going to take years, maybe decades, and it requires you to do the work. Real work, therapy, accountability, changing who you are at your core. I'll do it, whatever it takes. We'll see. Another silence. The lawyer you're hiring for me, he said. You don't have to. I don't deserve it. No, you don't, but I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because I need to be able to live with myself. And I can't live with myself if I abandon you completely, even after what you did. That's my weakness, I guess. It's not weakness, Mom, it's grace. Don't, I said sharply. Don't turn this into some redemption story. Not yet, maybe not ever. You tried to destroy me. You were going to lock me in a hellhole and drug me into submission so you could steal everything I had. That's not something you come back from with a few apologies and some therapy sessions. I know. Do you? Because you keep saying you're sorry like that fixes it. It doesn't. Sorry is just a word. It's what you do next that matters. What should I do? Tell the truth. All of it. Testify against Lydia. Help the police investigate Margaret's death and James's accident. Be completely, brutally honest about your part in this. Don't minimize. Don't make excuses. Just tell the truth. Okay, I will. And Daniel? Yeah? Don't call me for a while. I need space. I need time to figure out if I can ever look at you the same way again. His breath hitched. How long? I don't know, months, maybe longer. When I'm ready, I'll reach out. And if you're never ready, then you'll have your answer. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear, from power, from the realization that I'd just set a boundary with my own child and the world hadn't ended. Maybe Detective Walsh was right. Maybe boundaries were healthy, even with family, especially with family. I didn't sleep that night either. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lydia's notebook, those cold, calculated words, the way she'd reduced my entire life to a dollar amount and a timeline. By 6 a.m., I gave up and made coffee. The sunrise through my kitchen window looked the same as it always did, but everything felt different. I felt different, harder, less willing to accept things I couldn't change. My phone had 17 missed calls. 3 from reporters who'd somehow gotten my number, 5 from people I barely knew, probably calling to gossip, 2 from my friend Janet, who I hadn't spoken to in months because I'd been too ashamed to admit how distant Daniel had become, and 7 from a number I didn't recognize. I was deleting the voicemails when someone knocked on my door. I froze. It was barely past 6 in the morning. Nobody knocked this early unless something was wrong. I looked through the peephole. Detective Walsh stood on my porch, looking like she hadn't slept either. I opened the door. Mrs. Carter, I'm sorry to come by so early. Can I come in? The formality in her voice scared me. What happened? Please, inside. I stepped back and let her in. She sat at my kitchen table without being invited, which meant this was bad. Lydia made bail, Walsh said. The floor dropped out from under me. What? How? You said she wouldn't... Her father showed up. I didn't know she had family, but apparently dear old dad is some retired judge from Connecticut with deep pockets and deeper connections. Posted $1 million cash. She walked out at 5 a.m. She's free? For now. She has a GPS monitor. She's ordered to stay away from you and your son. But yes, she's out. I sat down before my legs gave out. She's going to run. You know that, right? She's going to disappear. We've got people watching her, and her passport's been flagged. But you're right to be concerned, which is why I'm here. Walsh pulled a business card from her pocket and slid it across the table. This is a private security company. They do protection details. Your lawyer already called them. They're sending someone over within the hour. I can't afford... Ms. Reeves is covering it. She says you can argue with her about it later, but for now, you're getting protection whether you like it or not. I stared at the card. Summit Security Services. For how long? Until Lydia's trial, or until she violates her bail conditions and gets thrown back in jail. Whichever comes first. This is insane. This is necessary. Walsh leaned forward, her eyes intense. Mrs. Carter, we're building a case against her for 3 murders. Margaret Chen, James Hartwell, and we're looking into a third, an elderly man named Robert Finch, who died in a care facility 2 years before Lydia married Daniel. She was his nurse. 3 murders. My vision swam. She's a serial killer. Functionally, yes, she targets vulnerable people, gains their trust or access to their assets, then eliminates them in ways that look accidental or natural. She's been doing this for at least 8 years that we can prove, probably longer. And she almost got me. But she didn't. You survived. And now you're the key witness who can put her away forever, which makes you dangerous to her. The weight of that settled over me like a blanket made of lead. You think she tried to kill me? I think she's desperate. I think her entire world is crumbling. I think she's a predator backed into a corner. So yes, I think you need protection. After Walsh left, I sat alone in my kitchen and tried to process the fact that I needed a bodyguard at 67 in my own home. The security guy showed up at 7:30. His name was Marcus Chen. No relation to Margaret, he assured me immediately, and he looked like he'd been carved out of granite. 6'3", maybe 240 pounds, with kind eyes that didn't match his intimidating frame. Mrs. Carter, I'll be staying in my vehicle outside. You won't even know I'm here, but if you need anything or if you see anything suspicious, you call me immediately. He handed me his card with his direct number. I mean it. Anything. A car that drives by twice. A delivery you weren't expecting. A phone call that feels off. You call. This feels like overkill. Feeling safe feels like overkill until something happens. Then it feels like not enough. He had a point. I spent the day trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. I did laundry. I paid bills. I called Janet back and gave her the abbreviated version of what had happened. She listened without interrupting, then said, I'm coming over. You don't have to. Evelyn, you just found out your son tried to kill you and your daughter-in-law is a serial killer. I'm coming over. End of discussion. She showed up an hour later with a casserole and a bottle of wine I'd never be able to drink again without thinking of poison. We sat at my table, the casserole between us, and she just looked at me. You should have called me sooner, Janet said. I know. I would have helped. I would have been there. I was embarrassed. I thought I'd done something wrong, that Daniel pulling away was my fault somehow. Evelyn, you're a good mother. Too good, maybe. That boy should have been grateful for everything you did for him. Instead, he tried to rob you blind. Hearing it said so bluntly made it real again, made it hurt again. He was being manipulated, I said weakly. So, adults get manipulated every day. They still make choices. He chose wrong multiple times. He's trying to make it right. Is he? Or is he just trying to save his own skin? I didn't have an answer to that. Janet reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm not saying you shouldn't forgive him eventually. I'm saying you don't have to forgive him now. You don't owe him anything, not after what he did. He's my son, and you're his mother, but that's a relationship, not a suicide pact. You're allowed to protect yourself, even from him. We ate the casserole in silence. It was chicken and rice and vegetables, perfectly seasoned, exactly the kind of comfort food you make for someone whose life is falling apart. I saw the news, Janet said after a while. They're calling Lydia the Black Widow killer. That's dramatic. Is it? 3 dead husbands and family members? She literally fits the definition. Alleged. 3 alleged victims. She hasn't been convicted of anything yet. Janet gave me a look. You know she did it, right? You know she killed those people. Yes, I know. Then why defend her? I'm not defending her. I'm just being accurate, innocent, until proven guilty. You're being too fair. That's always been your problem. You give people the benefit of the doubt even when they're actively trying to destroy you. Maybe she was right. Maybe I needed to learn to be less fair, less forgiving, less accommodating. Maybe survival meant becoming someone I wasn't sure I wanted to be. Janet stayed until dark, then hugged me tight before she left. Call me every day, even if it's just to tell me you're okay. I need to know you're okay. I will. Promise me, Evelyn. I promise. After she left, I checked all my locks again. Then I texted Marcus. Everything okay out there? His response was immediate. All clear. Get some rest. I tried. I really did. But around 11 p.m., my phone rang. Patricia Reeves. We have a problem, she said without preamble. My stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Lydia's lawyer filed a motion to dismiss all charges. Claims the recording was obtained illegally. Says you entrapped her. that the whole thing was a setup orchestrated by a bitter, mentally unstable woman with a grudge against her son's wife. That's insane. It's strategy. They're going to paint you as the villain, the overbearing mother who never accepted her daughter-in-law, who made up this elaborate story because you couldn't stand that Daniel chose Lydia over you. But the evidence, they're claiming the notebook is fake, that Maria planted it, that the drugs were yours for anxiety, and you're projecting your own issues onto Lydia. I couldn't breathe. Will it work? No, the evidence is too strong. Daniel's testimony alone destroys their narrative. But it's going to get ugly. They're going to drag your name through the mud. They're going to make you look unstable, paranoid, vindictive. Let them, I said. I know the truth. The truth matters less than the story, Evelyn. You need to prepare yourself for that. After we hung up, I sat in the dark and thought about stories, about how easy it is to twist facts into fiction, to make the victim look like the villain. Lydia was good at that, probably had been her whole life, but I had something she didn't. I had people who believed me. The next morning, Detective Walsh called. We need you to come down to the station. Lydia's lawyer wants to depose you. Already? They're moving fast, trying to get ahead of the narrative. You don't have to do it without Miss Reeves present. When? This afternoon, 2:00. Patricia met me at the station. She was wearing a power suit that probably cost more than my car, her hair pulled back in a severe bun that meant business. Don't let them rattle you, she said as we walked in. They're going to try to make you angry, to get you to say something you'll regret. Stay calm. Answer only what's asked. Don't elaborate. I can do that. Can you? Because you're a people pleaser, Evelyn. You want everyone to like you. You want to explain yourself. But in there, you can't do that. You have to be cold, factual, unbending. I wasn't sure I could be those things, but I was going to try. The deposition room was small and airless. Lydia's lawyer was a man in his 50s with silver hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. His name was Gerald Hutchins, and he looked like he enjoyed crushing people. Mrs. Carter, thank you for coming. He didn't sound thankful. He sounded like a predator sizing up prey. Patricia sat beside me, her hand on my arm. A reminder, stay calm. Hutchins started with softballs. My name, my address, my relationship to Daniel. Then he went for the throat. Mrs. Carter, would you say you have a good relationship with your son? We have a complicated relationship. Complicated how? We've been distant lately. Why is that? You'd have to ask him. I'm asking you. Why do you think your son pulled away from you? Patricia squeezed my arm. Warning. I don't know, I said carefully. Come now, Mrs. Carter. Surely you have some idea. Did you fight? Did you say something to offend him? Not that I'm aware of. Not that you're aware of. Interesting. So you acknowledge that you might have done something to damage the relationship without even realizing it? That's not what I said. Then what are you saying? I'm saying relationships are complicated. People grow apart for many reasons. Hutchins smiled. It made my skin crawl. Let's talk about Lydia. When did you first meet her? About 3 years ago at Daniel's birthday dinner. And what was your first impression? She seemed nice. Just nice? Polite, well-mannered. Daniel seemed happy with her. But you didn't like her. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. It's in your body language right now. You tense up when I mention her name. Patricia cut in. Is there a question, counselor? Hutchins ignored her. Mrs. Carter, have you ever been diagnosed with any mental health conditions? No. Anxiety, depression? No. Are you sure? Because I have medical records here that show you were prescribed Xanax in 2018. My heart stopped. That was temporary. After my husband died, I took it for maybe 2 months. But you were prescribed it for anxiety, which means you have a history of mental health treatment. Grief counseling isn't mental illness. I didn't say it was. I'm simply establishing that you've struggled with emotional stability in the past. My husband died, I said, my voice shaking now. I was grieving. That's normal. Of course it is. No one's judging you, Mrs. Carter. But grief can do strange things to people, can't it? Make them see things that aren't there. Imagine threats that don't exist. Patricia stood up. This deposition is over. We're not finished. Yes, we are. You're not deposing my client. You're harassing her. We're done here. She pulled me out of the room before I could say something I'd regret. In the hallway, I was shaking so badly I had to lean against the wall. He made me sound crazy, I said. That's his job, to create doubt. But Evelyn, listen to me. This is just theatre. The jury isn't going to hear this deposition. And even if they did, we have too much concrete evidence. Daniel's testimony, Maria's evidence, the notebook, the drugs, the pattern with Margaret and James. One deposition where he made you look flustered doesn't outweigh all of that. But what if it does? What if they believe her version? They won't, trust me. But trust was in short supply these days. That night I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mrs. Carter? A woman's voice. Shaky. Scared. Who is this? My name is Rebecca Finch. You don't know me, but I think Lydia Hartwell killed my grandfather. Everything stopped. Robert Finch? I asked. Yes. How did you? The police mentioned him. Said they were investigating his death. I need to talk to you in person. There are things I know, things I never told the police because I thought I was being paranoid. But now, seeing the news, knowing what she tried to do to you, I think I was right. I think she murdered him. You need to call Detective Walsh. She's the one handling... I tried. She told me to be patient, that they're building a case, but I can't be patient anymore. My grandfather was everything to me, and she took him. She took him and she walked away with his money, and no one believed me when I said something was wrong. I heard myself in her voice. The desperation, the need to be believed. Where are you? I asked. Coffee shop on Maple Street, the Blue Jay. The same place I'd met Maria. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I texted Marcus. Need to go out, meeting someone, coffee shop on Maple. His response, I'll drive you. Rebecca Finch was younger than I expected, maybe 30, pretty with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and unanswered questions. She was sitting in the same booth where Maria had shown me Lydia's crimes. Thank you for coming, she said when I sat down. I know this is weird, a stranger calling you, but I didn't know who else to talk to. Tell me about your grandfather. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. An elderly man with kind eyes and a warm smile, Robert Finch. He was 81 when he died, healthy, active. He volunteered at the library, played golf twice a week, then he fell, broke his hip, needed surgery and rehab. And Lydia was his nurse. Yes, at the rehab facility. She was so attentive, so caring. She convinced him to hire her as his private caregiver when he went home. Said she could give him better care than the facility. He trusted her. What happened? He got worse, not better. He was confused all the time, sleeping 20 hours a day, losing weight. I visited him and I knew something was wrong, but when I asked Lydia about it, she said it was normal, part of the recovery process, part of aging. You didn't believe her? No, I wanted to take him to a different doctor. Get a second opinion, but Lydia said that would be too stressful for him, that I should trust her. She was the professional. And then? Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. He died. 3 months after hiring her. Heart attack in his sleep. The autopsy showed nothing suspicious. Just an old man whose heart gave out. But you don't think that's what happened? I know it's not. Because a week before he died, I went to his house unannounced. Lydia was there, and she was arguing with someone on the phone. I heard her say, he's taking too long. I need to speed this up. I can't wait another 6 months. When she saw me, she pretended she'd been talking to a contractor about renovations. My blood ran cold. Did you tell the police? Yes. They said it wasn't enough, that it could have been about anything, that I was grieving and reading too much into things. And the money? Grandpa left everything to me in his will, but 3 days before he died, he changed it. Suddenly Lydia was the primary beneficiary, $500,000. The lawyer said Grandpa came in personally, seemed lucid, insisted on the change. But you think? I think she drugged him, took him to that lawyer while he was confused and compliant, made him sign papers he didn't understand, then she killed him before he could change it back. It was the same pattern, the exact same pattern. Have you told Detective Walsh this? All of it? Yes. That's why they're investigating. But she said it could take months, that they need to exhume the body, test for drugs, build a timeline, and meanwhile Lydia is out there, free. She made bail. I know, I saw, and I'm terrified she's going to disappear, that she's going to run before they can charge her, and my grandfather will never get justice. We sat in silence for a moment, two women bound by the same predator. What do you need from me? I asked finally. Just tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me you believe me. Rebecca, I believe you. Everything you're describing she tried to do to me. Everything. She started crying. Real gasping sobs. I thought I was losing my mind, she said. Everyone told me I was being paranoid, that I was looking for someone to blame because I couldn't accept that Grandpa was just old. You weren't paranoid, you were right. But being right doesn't bring him back. No, it doesn't, but it might stop her from doing it to someone else. We talked for another hour, comparing notes, matching patterns. By the time we were done, we had a timeline that stretched back almost a decade, at least 5 victims that we could identify, probably more we didn't know about. Lydia Hartwell wasn't just a killer, she was prolific. When I got home, I called Detective Walsh and told her everything Rebecca had said. I know, Walsh said, she's been very helpful, but Mrs. Carter, you need to be careful. You're inserting yourself into an active investigation. That makes you vulnerable. I'm already vulnerable. Lydia tried to kill me, remember? Which is exactly why you should stay out of it. Let us handle this. How? You let her out on bail. She's free right now. She could be planning her next move. We're monitoring her every move. Are you? Because she's smart. She's been getting away with murder for years. You really think a GPS monitor is going to stop her if she decides to run? Or if she decides I'm too dangerous to leave alive? Silence on the other end. I'll increase patrols around your house, Walsh said finally. That's not enough. It's all I can offer right now. After I hung up, I stood at my window and looked out at Marcus's car parked at the curb. One man, one bodyguard between me and a serial killer who'd made eliminating inconvenient people her life's work. It didn't feel like enough. It didn't feel like nearly enough. That night, I dreamed about Lydia. She was standing at my bedside, holding a wine glass filled with something dark and thick. She was smiling. Just drink it, Evelyn, she said. It'll all be over soon. I woke up screaming. Marcus was at my door in under a minute, gun drawn. What happened? Nothing. Nightmare. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. That's what I'm here for. But he couldn't protect me from my own mind, from the fear that had rooted itself deep in my chest and refused to let go. I spent the next 3 days barely leaving my house. Patricia kept me updated on the case. The prosecution was building something solid. They'd exhumed Margaret Chen's body and found traces of sedatives that shouldn't have been there. They were working on getting James Hartwell's body exhumed next. The walls were closing in on Lydia, which made her more dangerous than ever. On the 4th day, my doorbell rang at 3 p.m. Marcus checked first. Then he came to get me, his face grim. It's your son. Daniel stood on my porch, looking like he'd aged 10 years in a week. His eyes were hollow. His clothes hung loose on him. Mom, please, I need to talk to you. I looked at Marcus. He shrugged. Your call. I let Daniel in. We sat in my living room, the same living room where I'd spent so many evenings imagining him as a child, where I'd rocked him to sleep, where I'd helped him with homework, where I'd believed we'd always be close. They're going to charge me, he said without preamble. Conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted elder abuse. The DA offered a plea deal, 3 years probation, community service, mandatory counseling. If I testify against Lydia, are you going to take it? I don't know. My lawyer says I should, that if we go to trial, I could get actual prison time. But Mom, testifying against her, telling everything, It means admitting publicly that I tried to hurt you. It means the whole world knowing what I am." "They're going to know anyway," I said. "The trial will be public. Your name is already in the news." "I know, but there's a difference between being accused and confessing. Once I testify, there's no taking it back. No pretending it was a misunderstanding. It's just the truth. Forever." "Is that what you're afraid of? The truth?" He looked at me with such pain in his eyes I almost couldn't stand it. "I'm afraid of losing you permanently," he said. "If I do this, if I get up on that stand and tell everyone what we planned, what I was willing to do, you'll never forgive me." "Daniel, I don't know if I'm going to forgive you anyway, with or without your testimony." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "But," I continued, "if you don't testify, if you protect her, if you choose her over the truth, then I know for certain I never will. Because that would mean you haven't learned anything, that you're still the same weak, manipulated man who poured poison into his mother's wine glass. I'm not that man anymore. Prove it." We stared at each other across the coffee table that had hosted 1,000 family moments that suddenly felt like lies. "Okay," he said finally. "I'll do it. I'll testify. I'll tell them everything." "Good." He started to stand, then stopped. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "What?" "Do you think there's any version of the future where we're okay again? Where you can look at me without seeing what I did?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "Maybe," I said, "in 10 years, 20, if you do the work, if you actually change, if you spend every day trying to become someone worthy of forgiveness, maybe then, but not now. No, not now. Right now, I can barely stand to be in the same room with you." He nodded slowly. "That's fair. That's more than fair." He left without hugging me. I watched through the window as he walked to his car. He sat in the driver's seat for a long time, his head in his hands. Part of me wanted to run out there, to tell him I loved him, that we'd get through this, but I didn't, because maybe we wouldn't get through this. Maybe some betrayals are too big to survive. 2 weeks later, I got the call I'd been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. Detective Walsh. Her voice was tight with barely contained excitement. Lydia violated her bail conditions. She cut off her GPS monitor and ran. We picked her up 3 hours later at the Canadian border. She's back in custody. No bail this time. I sat down hard on my kitchen chair. She ran. Tried to. Had a fake passport, a wig, 50,000 in cash. She was gone for good if we hadn't been tracking her father's car. He claimed he didn't know she'd taken it, but we're looking into charging him as an accessory. When's the trial? Fast-tracked now. Running makes her look guilty. The DA is pushing for 6 weeks. Maybe sooner. 6 weeks until I'd have to face her in court. 6 weeks until I'd have to relive the worst week of my life in front of strangers. 6 weeks until Daniel would have to stand up and tell the world what kind of son he'd become. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt exhausted. The media circus started immediately. News vans parked outside my house, reporters shouting questions every time I stepped onto my porch. My face was on the evening news with the caption, "Black Widow's intended victim speaks out," except I hadn't spoken to anyone. Patricia filed a restraining order against the press. It didn't help much. Janet came over every day, running interference, making sure I ate, forcing me to take walks around my neighborhood with Marcus trailing behind like a very large, very armed shadow. "You need to stay strong," Janet said one afternoon as we walked past a news van. "This trial is going to be brutal. They're going to make you relive everything." I know. And Daniel, watching him testify, that's going to hurt. I know that too. Do you? Because you keep saying you're fine, but Evelyn, you're not eating. You're not sleeping. You look like you've aged 10 years in 2 weeks. What do you want me to say? That I'm falling apart? Fine. I'm falling apart. My son tried to kill me. The woman he married has killed at least 3 people we know about. My entire life has become a true crime documentary. I'm not fine. I'm never going to be fine. Janet grabbed my arm and stopped walking. Yes, you are. You're going to get through this. You're going to testify. You're going to watch them convict her, and then you're going to rebuild, because that's what survivors do. That word again, survivor. I was so tired of surviving. The prosecution team met with me 3 times before the trial. They prepared me for the questions I'd face, the timeline I'd need to recount, the evidence I'd need to identify. They warned me about Lydia's lawyer, Gerald Hutchins, who would try to make me look unreliable, emotional, vindictive. Let him try, I said during the 3rd meeting. I know what happened. No amount of legal theatre changes that. The lead prosecutor, a woman named Amanda Chen, another Chen, the universe had a sick sense of humor, smiled grimly. That's exactly the attitude you need, confident, unshakable. The jury needs to see that you're telling the truth. I am telling the truth. I know, but juries don't always care about truth as much as they care about who tells the better story. The trial started on a Tuesday in October. The courthouse was packed. I'd never seen so many people crammed into one space. Reporters, curious onlookers, Rebecca Finch and her family, Maria, who'd flown back from wherever she'd been hiding to testify, and Daniel, sitting alone in the back row looking like he wanted to disappear. Lydia was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit that should have made her look diminished, defeated. Instead, she looked defiant, her chin up, her eyes cold and calculating as she scanned the courtroom. When her gaze landed on me, she smiled, actually smiled, like this was all just a game and she was still convinced she could win. I stared back at her without blinking, without flinching. You tried to erase me, I thought, but I'm still here. The trial lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of testimony, evidence, expert witnesses explaining how benzodiazepines affect cognitive function, how conservatorships can be weaponized, how predators identify and isolate their victims. Maria testified first. She was nervous, her voice shaking, but she held her ground. She explained how she'd found the documents, the drugs, the notebook, how she'd risked everything to warn me. Hutchins tried to destroy her on cross-examination. Ms. Santos, you were fired from 2 previous household positions for theft, were you not? Maria's face went white. That was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding where valuable items went missing and you were let go without a reference. Those charges were dropped. I was never convicted of anything, but the accusation exists, which raises the question, how do we know you didn't plant evidence in this case? How do we know you're not trying to frame my client to cover up your own crimes? I didn't plant anything, Maria's voice cracked. I found that notebook in her closet. I found the drugs in her bathroom. I took photos because I knew no one would believe me otherwise. Convenient, a housemaid with a criminal history suddenly becomes a hero by framing her employer. I'm not framing anyone. She tried to kill Mrs. Carter. I just made sure someone knew about it. The jury looked unconvinced. Hutchins had done his job. He'd planted doubt. But then the prosecution played my recording. The courtroom went silent as Lydia's voice filled the air, cold, calculated, admitting everything. You don't need that money. You're going to die in 10, maybe 15 years. It's family. It's what families do. We need the money. We're drowning. And then the most damning part. Shady Pines would have been fine. You would have been fed and housed and medicated. You wouldn't have known the difference. When it ended, the silence was absolute. I watched the jury, watched their faces shift from skeptical to horrified. Hutchins objected, called it entrapment, called it illegal recording, called it manipulation. The judge overruled him. The recording is admissible. Continue, counselor. Rebecca Finch testified about her grandfather, about the sudden will change, about Lydia's suspicious behavior, about the phone conversation she'd overheard. The medical examiner testified about Margaret Chen's exhumation, about the levels of sedatives found in her tissue samples, levels inconsistent with prescribed dosages, levels that suggested deliberate overdose over time. An accident reconstruction expert testified about James Hartwell's crash, about inconsistencies in the police report, about evidence suggesting the brake line had been tampered with. Day after day, witness after witness, the prosecution built a mountain of evidence so high it blocked out the sun. And then it was Daniel's turn. I wasn't sure I could watch. Patricia offered to take me out of the courtroom. I refused. I needed to see this, needed to hear him say it. Daniel took the stand wearing a suit that didn't fit right anymore. He'd lost weight. His face was gaunt. He looked like a ghost of the man I'd raised. Amanda Chen approached him gently. "Mr. Carter, can you tell the court about your relationship with the defendant?" Daniel's voice was barely above a whisper. "We were married for 3 years. And during that marriage, did Miss Hartwell ever discuss her previous relationships with you?" She said her first husband died in a car accident, that her mother died in a care facility. She made it sound like she was unlucky, like tragedy followed her. "Did you believe her?" "Yes, I had no reason not to." "When did that change?" Daniel looked down at his hands. "When I started seeing the same patterns, the same strategies. She told me we needed to get control of my mother's assets before she declined, that it was our duty, our responsibility. She made it sound noble." "Did she tell you how to accomplish this?" "Yes, she had a whole plan. The conservatorship, the facility, the drugs to make my mother seem confused." "And you went along with it?" Daniel's voice broke. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I was desperate, because we were drowning in debt, because she convinced me it was the right thing to do, that my mother would be cared for, that she wouldn't suffer, that it was better this way." "Did you believe that?" He looked up and his eyes found mine across the courtroom. "I wanted to believe it, but no, deep down I knew it was wrong. I knew what we were doing was evil. I chose money over my mother. I chose comfort over doing the right thing." The courtroom was silent. "When did you realize the full extent of what Miss Hartwell was capable of?" "When my mother showed me the article about Margaret Chen, when I saw the notebook, when I understood that this wasn't her first time, that she'd done this before, that she was a predator, and I was helping her hunt my own mother." Amanda Chen paused. "Let that sink in." Then, "Mr. Carter, in your own words, what was the plan for your mother after you gained conservatorship?" Daniel took a shaky breath. "We were going to put her in Shady Pines, keep her sedated, drain her accounts over time, and when the money was gone..." He couldn't finish. "When the money was gone, what?" "I don't know. Lydia never said explicitly, but based on what happened to her mother, to James, I think my mother would have had an accident, an overdose, something that looked natural." Someone in the gallery gasped. "And you were willing to let that happen?" Tears streamed down Daniel's face. "I don't know. I tell myself I would have stopped it, that I would have drawn the line. But honestly, I don't know. And that's what I have to live with." Hutchins stood up for cross-examination. He was salivating, ready to destroy Daniel. "Mr. Carter, you're testifying here today as part of a plea agreement, correct?" "Yes." "So you're receiving leniency in exchange for your testimony against my client?" "Yes." "Which means you have every incentive to lie, to exaggerate, to paint Miss Hartwell as the villain while you play the victim." "I'm not lying. I'm telling the truth." "Are you? Or are you simply trying to save yourself by throwing your wife under the bus?" "Ex-wife. And I'm not throwing her anywhere. I'm telling the court what we planned, what she convinced me to do." "She convinced you? So you accept no responsibility for your own actions?" "I accept full responsibility. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm testifying. I did something unforgivable. I almost destroyed my mother, and I need to own that." "How convenient. Confession as redemption. But tell me, Mr. Carter, if your mother hadn't discovered the plan, if that housemaid hadn't interfered, would you be here today, or would you be living comfortably on your mother's money?" Daniel looked at me again. His face was devastated. "I don't know. I'd like to think I would have stopped it, but I might not have, and I'll hate myself for that uncertainty for the rest of my life." Hutchins pressed harder, tried to make Daniel look like a liar, a coward, a man blaming his wife to avoid prison, but Daniel didn't waver. He just kept telling the truth. Over and over, the same painful, humiliating truth. When it was over, when Daniel stepped down from the stand, he walked past me on his way out of the courtroom. Our eyes met for just a second. I didn't nod, didn't smile, didn't give him any indication of forgiveness, but I didn't look away either. That would have to be enough, for now. Then it was my turn. I'd prepared for this moment for weeks, run through the questions, practiced staying calm, reminded myself that the jury needed to see me as credible, strong, unshakable. But when I sat in that witness chair, with Lydia staring at me from the defense table and hundreds of eyes on me, I felt small again, vulnerable. Amanda Chen started with the basics: my name, my age, my relationship to Daniel. Then, "Mrs. Carter, can you tell us about the first dinner invitation you received from your son?" I did. I told them everything: the phone call, the house, the wine, the note from Maria, my escape. What went through your mind when you received that note? Terror, confusion. I didn't understand what was happening. I just knew something was very wrong. Did you drink the wine? No, the note said not to, so I faked illness and left. What did you do after you left? I went home. I sat in my car for an hour trying to understand what had just happened. Then I went inside and tried to breathe. When did you learn about the full extent of the plan? The next morning, Maria called me. We met at a coffee shop. She showed me everything: the documents, the drugs, the articles about Margaret Chen. That's when I understood that my son and his wife had been planning to erase me. My voice cracked on that last word. I took a breath, steadied myself. How did that make you feel? Like I'd already died, like the woman I'd been, the mother who trusted her child, who believed in family, who thought love was unconditional. That woman was gone, dead, and I had to become someone else just to survive. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of someone crying in the back. What did you do with this information? I contacted a lawyer, I secured my accounts, I put protections in place, and then I went back to their house. Why would you do that? Why return to the place where you'd nearly been poisoned? Because I needed to hear them say it. I needed them to admit what they'd planned. I needed to know I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't imagining this. And did they admit it? Yes, all of it. I recorded the conversation. You've heard the recording. How did it feel to hear your son confess to planning your destruction? The question was designed to elicit emotion. It worked. Like being hollowed out, I said, tears streaming down my face now. Like everything I'd built my life around, motherhood, family, love, was a lie. Like I'd wasted 67 years believing in something that never existed. Do you believe your son loves you, Mrs. Carter? I looked at Daniel. He was crying too, his whole body shaking. I think he does. In whatever broken, insufficient way, he's capable of loving anyone. But I also think his love is weak, that when it was tested, when it was his love for me versus his desire for money, the money won. And that's something I'll never be able to forget. Amanda Chen let that statement hang in the air. Then she turned to the jury. No further questions. Hutchins approached for cross-examination. His smile was predatory. Mrs. Carter, you've painted quite a picture of yourself as a victim. But let's examine your role in all this, shall we? My role? Yes. Your behavior. You admit you secretly recorded a conversation in your son's home. You admit you went there with the intention of entrapment. You admit you were working with the housemaid, who, as we've established, has a criminal history, to gather evidence against my client. I went there to get the truth, or to manufacture evidence. Tell me, Mrs. Carter, how much did you pay Maria Santos to help you frame my client? I didn't pay her anything. She helped me because she has a conscience, because she saw what your client was planning and couldn't stand by and let it happen. How noble. Or perhaps she saw an opportunity, an elderly woman who could be convinced that she was in danger, who could be manipulated into believing wild conspiracy theories about her loving daughter-in-law. There's nothing loving about trying to poison someone. Alleged poisoning, based on a note that conveniently appeared from a housemaid who conveniently had access to plant evidence, from a woman who conveniently recorded a conversation where my client was goaded into making statements that sound incriminating out of context. It wasn't out of context. She admitted everything. Did she? Or did she simply engage with your accusations? Did you ever consider that you might be the manipulator here, Mrs. Carter? That you've orchestrated this entire scenario because you couldn't accept that your son had moved on, that he'd chosen a wife over his overbearing mother? I felt my face flush with anger. I am not overbearing. I gave that boy everything. I sacrificed everything for him, and he repaid me by trying to steal my life. Or perhaps you're a controlling, possessive woman who couldn't stand to lose her grip on her son. Perhaps this whole elaborate story is simply the revenge of a mother who was rejected. That's not true, isn't it? You were prescribed anti-anxiety medication after your husband's death. You've lived alone for years. You admit you've had minimal contact with your son. Isn't it possible that loneliness and mental instability have caused you to misinterpret innocent actions as malicious intent? No, it's not possible because I have proof. Recordings, documents, witnesses, a pattern of behavior spanning years. This isn't a misunderstanding. This isn't paranoia. This is a predator who almost succeeded. Hutchins smiled. No further questions. I stepped down from the stand on shaking legs. Patricia grabbed my arm as I passed. You did great, she whispered. You were perfect. I didn't feel perfect. I felt like I'd been flayed alive. The prosecution rested their case. The defense called their witnesses, character witnesses who testified that Lydia was kind, generous, devoted to her family. They called doctors who suggested that Margaret Chen's death was natural, that the sedatives found in her system could have been prescribed. They called Daniel's former colleagues who said he was always in control, never manipulated, that if anyone was the mastermind, it was him, not Lydia. But the evidence was too strong, the pattern too clear, the recording too damning. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned, guilty on all counts: attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, unlawful possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute, and for Margaret Chen's death, murder in the second degree. For James Hartwell's death, murder in the first degree. The courtroom erupted. Lydia stood motionless, her face blank. Then she turned and looked directly at me, and she mouthed 2 words, "You won," like it had all been a game, like my life had been a prize to be claimed. At sentencing 3 weeks later, the judge gave her 45 years to life, consecutive sentences. She'd be 90 years old before she was eligible for parole. Effectively, a death sentence. Lydia didn't react, just stared straight ahead as they led her away. Daniel pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges as part of his deal. He got 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, mandatory counseling. No prison time. Part of me was relieved. Part of me thought he got off too easy, but mostly I was just tired. The months after the trial were strange, quiet. The reporters left. The bodyguard was dismissed. Marcus gave me his card and told me to call if I ever needed anything. Life was supposed to return to normal. But I didn't know what normal looked like anymore. Patricia helped me set up a trust, protected my assets, made sure that even if I lost my mind someday, no one could take advantage of me again. Janet dragged me to therapy. I resisted at first, but the therapist, a woman in her 60s named Dr. Morrison, understood something important. You're not just recovering from a crime, she said during our second session. You're grieving the relationship you thought you had, the son you thought you raised, the family you thought you belonged to. That grief is real. You need to honor it. So I did. I let myself grieve. I let myself be angry. I let myself feel all the things I'd been too scared to feel while I was just trying to survive. And slowly, so slowly, I barely noticed it happening, I started to rebuild. Not the life I'd had, that was gone forever, but a new life, one where I wasn't defined by being someone's mother, someone's victim, someone's target. I started volunteering at a domestic violence shelter, helping women who'd been manipulated, abused, erased by the people who claimed to love them. I knew what that felt like. Maria and I stayed in touch. She was working her way through nursing school now, determined to become the kind of caregiver Lydia had only pretended to be. Rebecca Finch and I formed a support group for people who'd been targeted by financial predators. We met twice a month, shared stories, helped each other heal. I learned that I wasn't alone, that what happened to me happened to thousands of people every year. Elderly parents, vulnerable adults, anyone with assets and trust. And I learned that survival wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. 6 months after the trial, Daniel called. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Mom? Hi, Daniel. I know you said you needed space. I've been trying to respect that, but I needed to hear your voice, to know you're okay. I'm okay. Silence. I'm in therapy, he said finally. 4 times a week, I'm working through everything, what I did, why I did it, who I became. That's good. I also started volunteering at an elder care facility, helping people who don't have family, who are alone. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I need to do something to be someone different. I'm glad you're trying. More silence. Do you think there'll ever be a time when we can talk, really talk, not like this, not on the phone, but face to face as mother and son? I thought about it. Maybe, someday, but not yet. How long? I don't know, Daniel, as long as it takes. I'm not going to put a timeline on forgiveness just to make you feel better. I understand, I do. I miss you, Mom. I miss who you used to be, I said, or who I thought you were. I'm not sure that person ever existed. He didn't, Daniel said quietly. The person you thought I was. That was the version of myself I wanted to be, but I never actually became him. I was always weaker than that, more selfish, and I'm sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life being sorry. Sorry isn't enough, but it's a start. We hung up without saying we loved each other. Maybe someday we would. Maybe someday I'd be able to look at my son and see something other than betrayal. But that day wasn't today. A year after the trial, I sold my house. Too many memories, too many ghosts. I bought a smaller place across town, modern, bright, full of windows that let in light. I filled it with plants and books and art I actually liked, instead of things I thought I should like. I made new friends, joined a book club, started taking painting classes. I learned that at 68 years old, I could still become someone new. The woman I'd been, the devoted mother, the grieving widow, the woman who measured her worth by how much she gave to others, she was gone. In her place was someone harder, more careful, less willing to sacrifice herself for people who didn't deserve it, but also someone stronger, more authentic, more fully herself. I stood in my new kitchen one morning, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise, and I realized something. I was happy. Not the shallow, performative happiness I'd convinced myself I felt before. Real happiness, the kind that comes from survival, from rebuilding, from refusing to let the people who try to destroy you have the final word. My phone buzzed. A text from Janet. Brunch today. I want to hear about your date last night. I smiled. I'd gone on a date, a real date, with a man from my book club who made me laugh and didn't need anything from me except my company. It had been nice. I texted back 1 p.m. and it wasn't a date, we're just friends. Her response, sure, keep telling yourself that. See you at 1. As I set my phone down, I caught my reflection in the window. The woman looking back at me was older than the one who'd walked into that dinner party a year ago, but she was also more alive. She'd survived attempted murder, a trial, the destruction of her family, and she'd come out the other side intact, not unchanged, never unchanged, but intact. I thought about Lydia sometimes, in prison, growing old in a cell, her beauty fading, her power gone. I didn't hate her anymore. Hate required energy I wasn't willing to spend. I just felt nothing. She was a chapter in my life that had ended, a storm I'd weathered, a monster who'd been defeated, and I thought about Daniel, trying to rebuild his life, trying to become someone worthy of redemption. I hoped he made it, I really did. But I also knew that his journey wasn't my responsibility anymore. I'd spent decades putting him first, sacrificing for him, loving him more than I loved myself. And look where it got me. Now I was putting myself first, building a life that was mine alone, learning that self-preservation wasn't selfishness, that boundaries weren't cruelty, that protecting yourself was the most fundamental form of love. These were lessons I should have learned decades ago, but better late than never. I finished my coffee and got ready for brunch with Janet. As I locked my door behind me, my door to my house that I'd bought with my money that no one could take from me, I felt something unexpected. Gratitude. Not for what happened, never for that, but for what I'd become because of it. I'd been tested in the worst possible way. My own child had tried to erase me. A predator had nearly succeeded in stealing everything I'd worked for, but I'd survived. More than survived. I'd fought back. I'd won. I'd reclaimed my life, and that was worth something. That was worth everything. As I drove to meet Janet, the sun warm on my face, I thought about all the women out there who were where I'd been a year ago, scared, confused, being manipulated by people who claimed to love them. And I made a promise to myself. I would tell my story. I would help them recognize the signs. I would show them that survival was possible, that fighting back was possible, that rebuilding was possible, because if I could do it, a 67-year-old widow who'd never stood up for herself in her life, anyone could. The world was full of predators, people who saw kindness as weakness, trust as opportunity, love as leverage, but it was also full of survivors, people who'd been tested and refused to break, who'd been knocked down and chosen to stand back up. I was one of them now, and I would never ever let anyone make me feel small again. That was my ending. Not perfect, not tied up in a neat bow, but honest, real, mine. And after everything I'd been through, that was enough. That was more than enough.